Between jobs again? My mom sighed at Christmas dinner. Dad nodded without looking up. Can't keep steady work. The words landed the way they always did. Heavy. Final. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I stayed by the window, adjusting a strand of lights on the Oregon pine tree we'd dragged in that morning, pretending a bulb was loose just so my hands had something to do while my chest tightened. My fingers moved because my breath couldn't. Behind us, the TV murmured through holiday commercials, laughter tracks, and soft jingles that filled the spaces where conversations were supposed to feel warm. Then the sound shifted. Sharper. Urgent. A voice cut through the room. Breaking news. Everyone paused. Forks lowered. Conversations stalled. Even the dog lifted its head. And before the name was spoken, before the reporter finished the sentence he had barely begun, I knew exactly what was coming. My name is Emily. I'm in my early 30s, and according to my family, I've been finding myself for far too long. From the outside, we look like the kind of family people envy. Cozy home in a quiet Oregon suburb, big holiday dinners with far too much food, a tablecloth that only comes out in December. My mom, Linda, is devoted to traditions. My dad, Robert, believes in routine, in predictability, in plans that unfold neatly and quietly. My older brother, Jason, is living proof in their eyes that those values work. He followed the script they wrote for him. College, a stable career, a promotion every few years, a wife who fits right in. Whenever relatives visit, his name comes up before dessert even hits the table. His job, his new title, his next step. And then there's me. I chose a different path, one that doesn't fit neatly into their vocabulary. I work from my laptop. I travel when I need to. I build things that don't have storefronts or uniforms or official job titles you can brag about at a dinner table. To them, that means instability, risk, chaos dressed as hope. I've tried explaining. God, have I tried. I've talked about the systems we were building, the hospitals we were partnering with, the data we were analyzing, the late nights that were fueled not by panic but by purpose. But somehow, the more I explained, the less they understood. Or maybe they just didn't want to. Each time, my mom would smile politely and ask if I'd considered something more stable. My dad would mention a friend's daughter who just got hired somewhere reputable. Jason would smirk and say at least I had flexibility. Eventually, I learned the pattern. The more detail I gave, the more ammunition they had to dismiss. So I stopped. At family gatherings, I kept my answers vague. I learned to smile without explaining. If I didn't give details, they couldn't pick them apart. But Christmas was always the hardest. Something about the quiet expectation that hangs in the air. Something about how the lights twinkle no matter what mood you're in. Something about how loudly comparison echoes through a room full of people who believe they know you better than you know yourself. So when my mom asked the question I knew was coming, "Have you heard back from anyone yet?" I felt the familiar pressure around my ribs. "I'm not applying anywhere right now," I said evenly. Jason laughed under his breath. "Still doing the whole flexibility thing?" "It's not a phase," I said quietly. Dad set his fork down, and the sound felt louder than it should have. "Emily," he said in that calm, disappointing tone he'd mastered, "you can't keep living like this. You can't expect things to work out without steady work." He gave one slow nod, like that settled everything. That nod hurt more than any lecture. My mom reached under the table and pulled out a small wrapped box. "We got you something practical this year." Inside was a leather portfolio, sleek, structured, the kind you'd bring to an interview in downtown corporate building. "For when you're ready," she added quickly. "First impressions matter." I thanked her, because that's what you do when your family hands you a gift shaped like a verdict. Then my dad placed an envelope beside my plate. "We know money's probably tight. This should help with bills until you land something reliable." The check was generous. Too generous. The kind that assumes you're drowning without asking if you can swim. I pushed it back toward him. "I don't need this." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Pride isn't going to pay rent." "I'm not being prideful," I said. "I'm being honest." My mom exhaled hard through her nose. "We never see anything concrete, Emily." And there it was, the sentence they'd been circling all night, the thesis of their misunderstanding, the proof they believed they needed because they refused to accept mine. The room grew smaller. The lights on the tree flickered like they were trying to distract me. I stood up, quietly, before the pressure in my throat turned into something visible. I moved to the tree, adjusting an ornament that didn't need adjusting, straightening lights that were already straight. Behind me, the TV kept playing its holiday fluff. Then the tone shifted again, the second time that night. Sharp, serious. "Can someone turn that down?" Jason asked, but no one moved. The announcer's voice rose above the clinking dishes and awkward silence. Something about a rapidly growing healthcare technology company, something about a private founder, something about a reveal that had been anticipated for months. My phone buzzed in my pocket, once. Then again, a message from my partner. Short, apologetic, urgent. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. Because in that moment, standing by a Christmas tree in Oregon, with the people who believed they were watching my life fall apart, I understood something with terrifying clarity. They weren't concerned. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting their narrative of me. The one where I was the unstable one, the wandering one, the disappointment wrapped in potential they were still hoping to fix. And the truth they had refused to hear from me was about to arrive without my permission. I stayed by the tree longer than necessary, long enough for the room behind me to slip into that heavy silence where everyone pretends nothing uncomfortable has just been said. My mom began stacking plates she'd already wiped clean. My dad adjusted his chair, though it didn't need adjusting. Jason scrolled his phone like he needed confirmation that the outside world still existed and still made sense. No one apologized. No one reconsidered the check sitting on the table. And that was the moment something inside me finally settled. I used to think silence made me weak, that if I wasn't explaining myself clearly enough, patiently enough, the people who loved me would fill in the blanks with something generous. But they didn't. They filled them with worry, with assumptions, with judgment dressed up as guidance. For years, I tried to control the narrative, to walk them through my choices slowly enough that maybe they'd understand. But standing there, staring at a glass ornament reflecting the outline of my face, I realized how pointless that had been. They hadn't misunderstood me. They had decided who I was a long time ago. To them, I was the daughter who never settled, the one who floated from one project to another, the loose thread in an otherwise tidy family tapestry. Every explanation I gave only gave them more thread to pull, so I stopped giving explanations. I didn't turn around. I didn't return to the dinner table. I didn't offer one last justification wrapped neatly in a calm voice. I let them sit with the picture of me they preferred, the safe version, the small version, the incorrect version. Behind me, the TV's volume lifted just enough to cut across the silence in the room. Not loud enough for anyone to object, but loud enough to demand their attention. The announcer's voice was clearer now, serious, deliberate. Something about a healthcare technology system being used to cross the country. Something about predictive analytics for hospitals. Something about outcomes improving in ways that mattered. My phone buzzed again, then again, a steady pulse against my leg. I knew what each vibration meant. I knew what this moment was turning into. I knew the reveal I had been preparing for privately was arriving publicly at the worst imaginable time. But maybe the worst time was also the only time it ever could have happened. A moment where everything was already fragile. A moment where truth would land where it needed to. For a brief second, fear flickered in my chest. Not fear of being exposed. I had made peace with that years ago. The fear was for them, for the people behind me who believed they were protecting me with their doubt, for the people who had no idea the story they preferred wasn't real anymore. But then the fear dissolved, because the collapse had already happened. They just hadn't acknowledged it. Whatever came next wasn't mine to carry, and for the first time in years, that felt like relief instead of responsibility. The TV volume jumped suddenly, as though someone had leaned on the remote. "Breaking news," the announcer said, his voice dropping into the solemn cadence of something historic. A rapidly growing healthcare technology company has just confirmed the identity of its previously anonymous founder. Everything behind me froze. My mom turned toward the television first. The screen shifted from festive graphics to a stark newsroom. Red banners, serious expressions, numbers scrolling across the bottom. For years, the announcer continued, the company's leadership chose to remain private. Tonight, that changes. I didn't move. My hands stayed resting gently on the tree branches, the needles pressing lightly against my palms, grounding me. I felt anchored for the first time that evening. The camera switched to a blurred graphic of a name in silhouette. Jason leaned forward, frowning. "This is that company everyone's been talking about," he said quietly. "The hospital one, right?" My dad adjusted his glasses. "The system that predicts complications?" On the screen, the announcer nodded as if responding to them directly. The platform analyzes patient data in real time, helping medical teams act before emergencies developed. Hospitals using the system have reported significant improvements in outcomes. More numbers appeared, rounded, clean, impossible to dismiss. My mom gasped softly. Those numbers are incredible." The graphic shifted again. A headline stretched across the screen in bold red text. "Tonight, we can confirm the founder and majority owner is..." My name filled the screen. Emily Carter. Silence slammed into the room like a physical force. The tree lights blinked gently behind me. Yellow, white, yellow, white. My mom turned her head slowly toward the television, her eyes wide, her breath caught in her throat. "Emily," she whispered. My dad stared at the TV, then at me, then back at the TV. That's your name." "Yes," I said, the first word I had spoken in minutes. It settled into the room without drama, without apology, without triumph, just truth. The announcer read the company statement, how the team had been built, how hospitals had adopted the system, how lives had been saved. Jason pulled out his phone, hands shaking. "This is everywhere," he muttered. "Every network, every site, every alert. Emily, this is huge." His wife, Megan, covered her mouth. "They're saying mortality rates dropped by double digits." I nodded once. "That's what the data shows." Then came the valuation numbers. Billions. My mom made a song somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "Billions?" I turned fully then, the tree at my back, the truth at my front. "Yes." My dad rubbed his face with both hands. We gave you money. We thought you were struggling." "I know," I said softly. "We told you to find something stable," he continued, voice cracking. "I remember." Jason swallowed hard. "You let us think you were failing." "I told you I wasn't. You just didn't believe me." "That's not fair," my mom said weakly. "Isn't it?" I asked. My voice didn't waver. That surprised me. Every time I talked about my work, you changed the subject, or told me to be careful, or suggested something safer. You didn't want to understand. You wanted me to fit your idea of stability. The TV continued playing, but no one cared anymore. "You needed proof," I said. "Not from me, from a screen." My mom's shoulders shook. "I thought I was protecting you." "I know," I said, "but you were protecting an idea of me, not me." My dad looked up, eyes shining. "You built all this, and we treated you like a problem to fix." No one disagreed. The room felt different now. Heavy, honest, clean. "I'm not angry," I said, and for the first time, it was true. I was for years, but tonight isn't about anger. Jason looked up. "Then what is it about?" "Boundaries," I said. "Respect, trust." I walked to the table and picked up the envelope. I handed it back to my dad. "I don't need this, and I don't need advice unless I ask for it." He nodded instantly. Of course, of course." "I need you to believe me," I continued. "Not because a TV tells you to, but because I'm your daughter." My mom stepped closer, hesitant. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I was wrong." "I know." "Can you forgive us?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. The announcer's voice faded into background noise, talking about innovation, the future of healthcare, leadership. I took a slow breath. "Not tonight," I said honestly, "but we can start better than where we were." My dad stood. "You're right," he said. "You always were." Outside, cars slowed. Neighbors peered at glowing windows. Phones buzzed on the table. Headlines, mentions, notifications, speculation. The truth had entered the room, loud, uninvited, impossible to ignore. And for the first time, no one asked me to prove myself. Inside that house, something shifted. Something old fell apart. Something honest took its place. I wasn't the family disappointment anymore. I wasn't the problem to solve. And I didn't need to explain myself to anyone sitting in that room. That night didn't fix everything. It wasn't supposed to. But it did give me something I'd waited years for: space to breathe without being judged. And here's what I learned: respect should come before recognition. If someone only believes in you after the world applauds, their belief is already late. If you've ever been underestimated, misread, or dismissed by the people closest to you, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and send this video to someone who needs to hear it. There are more truths like this waiting to be told.